Hello and welcome to English Digest. I'm Seb.
And I'm your friend Laura.
How are you today, Laura?
I am great. And what about you?
Oh my god, I'm so glad you asked. I'm so stressed. I've had such a crazy day. I've had to drive across Taipei twice to do different jobs, to hand in some work to my boss, to take something to my teacher at university.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just like, and I was in traffic, so I was late for everything. It was just super stressful.
Time management is super important for you then.
Time management is something that I really need to work on. It's something that I'm not very good at. Like, I was thinking as I was driving, I was going to say driving crazily across Taipei, but I wasn't. I was stuck in traffic.
Okay.
While I was stuck in traffic, I was thinking I could have avoided all of this if I just planned my time better. You know, if I had thought about things a few days earlier, I'd try to do one of these jobs a few days before. It would have been fine.
And that won't be you.
It wouldn't be me, and it would require me to do some forward planning and to start jobs earlier. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about in today's translation section, or in part A of our translation section. We're talking about this great topic, procrastination. Now, I'll tell you more about this word in a minute. Let's begin by looking at our sentence. And I think it gives you a good idea of what procrastination is. Some people might put off important tasks because they're afraid of making decisions and taking responsibility for the consequences. OMG, this is me.
Really? Really?
So
You're irresponsible, in other words.
Yes. Yes, this really hits close to home. It really, I can feel it in my core, in my heart right now. It's sometimes when you have a really big job or something tough that you have to do, I don't know, a PowerPoint presentation, you're going to do a big speech and you have to write the speech. I would leave it to the very end because I always feel really nervous. Don't do that.
I would just I want to get it done ASAP, that kind of person. So then I can do something I want to do. Say if I want to just watch Netflix for, binge watch a little bit, I will make sure I do my homework or do whatever way beforehand. It's, okay, we're totally opposites then.
Yes, and I think your way is much better way of doing it.
Okay, 所以你们是比较像 Seb 这样子的人呢，还是跟我一样是时间管理大师哦？所以一开始我们的 sentence 就是说，有些人可能会拖延重要的任务哦，因为他们会害怕做决定，并为后果承担负责。那我们的时态 ，our tenses。OK， 是要使用现在简单式描述事实。所以我们来看一下拖延或是延后，我们可以用什么片语呢？我们可以用 put off， 但是其实这个句子我们也可以用 delay、postpone。I like this phrase, sit on。Okay, that's super cute. Okay, 或者是我们刚刚有提到的procrastinate 它有拖延的意思，搭配介系词 about 来替换。举例来说 ，We'll have to postpone the meeting to a later date because the boss is sick today.
So actually, there's a slight difference between procrastinating and postponing. They both mean to move it to a later date. However, when you postpone something, it just means to change the time to a later time. You've got that word post, that piece of the word post, which means after. So if Laura and I are going out for lunch and I text her a few days before and I say, hey, Laura, can we postpone lunch to Friday? I mean, can we move lunch back to Friday? Can we wait a few more days and then have lunch? You can't really procrastinate on having lunch.
It's kind of like your own fault that you procrastinate.
Yeah, when you procrastinate, it's a negative thing. Yeah. It's like you're avoiding doing something that you should do, not avoiding something you want to do.
It's like your own problem. Okay, but postpone is maybe it's for a good reason that it has to be postponed.
Yeah, if you procrastinate with your test preparation, that means you're I'm gonna watch Netflix. I'm gonna do this. But you can only procrastinate on your homework or procrastinate on your test preparation, on a job or on a study. Okay, so let's move on. We've got this other word here, make a decision. So in the article, we saw making decisions and taking responsibility. So make a decision here has got a slightly different meaning to the way we originally learned how to use make, right?
OK， 所以做决定我们就要用 make a decision 来表示。那我们搭配动词是 make 哦。OK， 那我们也可以用 reach or come to, arrive at， 然后再加 a decision， 用来表示经过思考而最后做出的决定哦。我们来举个例子会比较清楚。The judges have reached a decision. Millie is the winner of the competition.And we also saw another phrase, which is take responsibility for, 然后后面接名词或是动名词，就是为什么什么承担责任。Okay, an example sentence. No one in the group wanted to take responsibility for their failure. 这个团队里没有人愿意为他们的失败承担责任。
Exactly. So a similar word that's worth looking at here, I think, is accountability. That's the word I was thinking of when we looked at responsibility. So accountability is similar to responsibility because it means the position of being responsible for something and facing the consequences when it goes wrong. So when we hold someone accountable, we make them answer for their mistakes.So we could say the people of the town held the mayor accountable for spending city money on a new car. So they made him answer for his crimes. They made him be responsible for the bad things that he did. So when we hold someone accountable, we make them explain themselves or we might punish them for what they've done. Similarly, if you demand accountability, you demand that someone takes responsibility for something bad.So here, just now I mentioned when you're being held accountable, you face the consequences. So what does consequence mean?
Consequence 就是后果啊 And you could also use result. Yeah, the word result to interchange 就是来替换。所以后果可以用 result 跟 consequence。举个例子 The consequences for minor crimes like theft used to be much worse than they are now.偷窃等轻微犯罪的后果在过去比现在严重得多。
Right. I like that you pointed out consequence, result, because these are both things that happen because of something else. They're both effects, right? But a result is neutral and a consequence is something negative, you know? So a consequence of your actions is, I don't know, if you drive your car too fast, then a consequence of that is you'll get a speeding ticket. You know, a bad thing will happen.
Face your consequences.
Yes, exactly. So with consequences, we all want to avoid negative consequences. We actually, by the way, never say positive consequences. It sounds weird. We only talk about negative consequences. So we avoid negative consequences. So why are we always leaving our work to the last minute? Why are we not doing our homework and then 3 hours before the deadline we're like, oh my god, I have to do my homework?
Because we want to feel happier most of the time and do happy stuff. And the work that we don't want to do is probably like torturing or like stuff like homework, you know, homework
Right.
stuff. It's like playing video games versus doing homework.
Right, but if you think about it, it doesn't really make sense. It's like in our second sentence.
Okay.
They'll leave everything until the last minute, which can often lead to feelings of stress. So sometimes we put off doing work. Right. Like sometimes we put off doing work because we don't want the bad feeling of working. You know, you don't want the bad feeling of doing your homework. You don't want to be bored. You don't want to be tired. But then because you don't do your homework, you feel worse afterwards because you're stressed. So that's what this sentence is really saying, right? We have a Chinese translation for this sentence as well, don't we?
Yes, let's take a look. 所以刚刚的那一句话，整句的翻译是他们会把一切都留到最后一刻哦 until the last minute. 这通常会导致压力感哦。所以压力就是 stress. 那时态哦，主要使用未来式描述可能发生的事情。
Exactly. So we've got this first structure here. We've got a bit of grammar here. They'll leave everything until the last minute. We could also probably say they'll leave everything to the last minute. So what does this structure here, what does this grammar mean?
我们来看一下 until 就是直到，它是介系词或者是连接词哦。那后面我们可以接名词或是完整的句子，表示某个时间点。那我们说 not until 这样的句型，就是直到某个时间才开始做某个动作。
And similar structure that we can also use is it's only when ... that ... So this one changes it a little bit. Basically what it means is it emphasizes that when one thing has happened, something else can happen. So let's think about traveling on planes, right? During COVID, it's been very difficult to travel on planes, especially coming into Taiwan. And one of the things that you need to do to come into Taiwan, or you have needed to do for a long time, is you need to show that you have a negative COVID test.
Yes.
Right? So it's only when you show the airport authorities a negative COVID test that you can fly to Taiwan. So this structure here, it's only when one thing has happened that you can do something else. So after it's only when, we put the requirement, and then we have that, and then after that we have the thing that you can do. It's only when you show the airport authorities a negative COVID test that you can fly to Taiwan.
That
so if you do
sense.
it, you can fly there. If you don't do it, you can't. Basically, that's how it works.
Okay, so we mentioned until the last minute, didn't we?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, 所以最后一刻我们可以用 the last minute， 但我们也可以用 the last second， 最后一秒哦。而且我还很喜欢 the 11th hour， 我们可以用这个 phrase 来替换哦。大家有没有觉得很可爱？我们来看一下 Leanne, is that how you say this name?
Leanne, yes.
Yes, started her essay at the 11th hour and had to stay up all night to finish it.
My mum used to always love saying that phrase, the 11th hour, when I was in high school, because I was always leaving my homework until the very end.
I only know cloud 9. Why 11th hour? Why 11th?
Because think about a clock. Like, if a clock has 12 hours on it, right?
12. That idea?
When you get all the way to the 12, you've finished all the time. You've used all the time up. So the 11th hour is right at the end.
You wait until the last tiny minute.
Yes. Wait until the last second.
Cute.
Wait until the last minute. The 11th hour. Wait until the 11th hour.
I like that. I'm going to remember that phrase now.
No, it's a really good phrase. And you can use it for any time that you don't have enough time to do something because you've left it for too long. So whenever you start something too late, you can say, it's the 11th hour.
When I see this phrase again, I'll think of you.
Because
you always like to
cram.
It's because you always like to cram, right?
I do love to cram, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because cram, I think, is a really good word. Procrastinate is one you guys want to learn because we use it a lot among native speakers. Like, native speakers are always saying procrastinate. And another one is cram. So when you cram, cram basically originally means like sai jinshu, like force something into a box, for example, or into your car. If you don't have enough space and you force something in, that's cram. But we can also use it to do something intensively in a short amount of time. Normally, not enough time. So for example, we would normally use it to talk about studying or working intensively. We could say that you cram for a test, which I think is a bit like 拼命复习. So just like working really hard in the 11th hour, when you don't have enough time, that's what cramming
or
is.
临时抱佛脚. I like this one.
You can also cram by doing lots of things in a short amount of time as well. So it doesn't have to be studying. So I like this example. I crammed 3 countries into a 1-week business trip. 我出差1周跑了3个国家. So like I didn't have much time. I think my dad one time told me that he went to 3 cities in a day on a business trip.
In a day?
And he almost collapsed because he was running everywhere.
I could imagine for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fun. I mean, when we think about, you get to go to different countries, but not on a business trip, especially within a small amount of time.
Exactly. That's not so much fun. We've got one more word we need to cover for this sentence, lead to.
Lead to 这个片语就是导致，那当然本句也可以用 cause、result in 来替换。举例来说 the military's decision to bomb the city resulted in a huge loss of life. 这个军队轰炸这座城市的决定导致了巨大的生命损失。
Exactly. All right, let's take a quick break here, and when we're back, we will look at our second sentence. All right, so we talked about procrastination. Let's move on. Next, we are talking about waste. So waste is a really good topic. We can talk about wasting time. We can talk about the waste of your jeans. We can talk about wasting away in the desert. Lots of different things, lots of different meanings for the word waste. What kind of waste are we talking about today?
Is it like food? Like you're wasting food? Or packaging?
Almost, yeah. I was going to say you're in the ballpark. You're in the right area.
What are we talking about? Is it garbage?
You just said we're talking about plastic waste, like the plastic waste we generate when we eat things, when we buy food. Anyway, so yes, we're talking about waste. We're talking about plastic waste, food waste, and that's what our first sentence is about. A law banning the use of plastic packaging for most fruits and vegetables came into effect in France in January 2022. Ooh, okay, so this is just like what we were talking about. Do you think that law would work in Taiwan?
Nope. Judging from your little story just now. 一项禁止大多数水果和蔬菜使用塑胶袋包装的法律，已在西元2022年的1月在法国生效。我真的觉得台湾可能会比较难哦。
Actually, I have to say one good thing about Taiwan. I was going to talk about it later.
Yeah?
But Taiwan is planning on getting rid of all of its single-use plastic bags, cups, straws, chopsticks, all of that by 2030, I think. So they are trying to change it.
Oh.
So,
I think
Taiwan. I think it can happen.
7-Eleven, 7-Eleven or they give away a lot of those.
Too. Yeah, they're trying to get rid of it gradually. They're going to phase it out. And we'll talk about phasing out in a second. Let's look at our vocab for this sentence. So we've got the tense first, right?
Yes. 时态要使用过去式，因为你要描述过去发生的事情。所以像是刚刚有提到的a law banning the use. OK, 我们先来看 ban 这个字哦，它就是禁止，那直接加上事物作为受词。那你也可以用 forbid 或是 prohibit 或者是 outlaw 来替代。那这是都有表示禁止某人怎么样怎么样。如果你要说禁止某人做某事啊，或是禁止某人某物啊，常见的用法有ban or forbid or prohibit somebody from 然后接名词或者是 VING。 那如果你要用 forbid 的话哦，你可以说 forbid somebody to V， 就是接不定词这样子一个句型。那每次在讲这个句型还是要带一个例句，大家会比较清楚。 Mrs. Mays prohibits her students from using smartphones to look up information in class. Notice that we used using after the from, like you have to add ing. 就是梅斯老师禁止他的学生在课堂上使用智慧型手机查资料。Or Douglas forbade his children to stay up later than 10 p.m. until they were in college. 所以这里是 forbid somebody 然后接不定词的用法哦。Douglas 禁止他的孩子们熬夜到晚上10点以后，直到他们上大学。
Right. So I'm going to throw a lot of example sentences at you right now because we've talked about forbidding, prohibiting, outlawing, banning, a lot of good words here, but they have slight differences, just like we talked about with procrastinate and put off in the first part. So ban, forbid, prohibit, outlaw, they all mean to stop people from doing something, but they have slightly different meanings. When we ban something, we prohibit it by legal means. So, for example, the UK banned smoking in restaurants and bars in 2007. There was a law against it. So after 2007, you weren't allowed to smoke in a restaurant in the UK. It became illegal. That's not the same as forbidding. When you forbid something, then you command against it from a position of authority. So my mum forbade me from staying out past 10. And that means that she didn't create a law. She didn't tell me, you have to stay out, you have to come back before 10 or you'll go to jail. She just said you must come back. So it's slightly
different. Because she says so.
She says so. Exactly. That's a good phrase. She says so. Prohibit also means to forbid by authority, but not necessarily by a law. So, for example, the sign prohibits walking on the grass. No one's going to jail for walking on the grass. But you're not supposed to. There's a law. There's a rule against it. And lastly, this one is kind of easy to guess. Outlaw, to make something illegal. So same-sex marriage in California was legalized in 2006, outlawed in 2008, and then legalized again in 2013. So it was legal, then it was illegal, then it was legal again.
What?
So the middle bit was outlawing.
Yeah, that's kind of confusing. Hey.
Yeah. I had to read the Wikipedia page twice.
but is it true information?
It is true information.
Wikipedia
it did happen. It did happen. But it's legal now, so yay. Anyway, let's talk about packaging.
Of course, packaging 就是我们刚刚有提到，就是包装，表示东西的外包装或者是包装材料。那其他的字形相似的字还有 packing， 就是包装或是打包的过程，也有用来运送物品的包装材料的意思哦。而 package 则是指包裹。我们来看一下例句的使用。Masha was up all night to finish packing for her move to a new city. 玛莎整晚没睡，都在为准备这个搬到一个新的城市打包行李哦。Or I'm waiting for my packages from an online clothing store to arrive. This is so me. 我在等线上服装店的包裹送达。I do this like every day, probably. Order and wait for the packages to arrive.
All right. So after that, we also had this phrase come into effect.
Yeah, we do.
So the new law shows the countries. That's not the right sentence. The vegetables came into effect in France in January 2022.
Okay.
So the law came into effect. That means it started to become a law that people had to follow. A law that was existing and not just in the minds of the lawmakers. It came into effect.
Nice, okay. Come into effect 就是生效 ，OK。那我们也可以用 come into force 来替换，所以就是尤其是指法律啦，或者是规定开始实施生效这样的意思。不要搞错，不是12生肖那个生肖啦。我们来举例哦。The new school hours for elementary school students will come into force next semester. 国小学生新的上课时间将于下学期生效。
Exactly. So moving on to the second sentence, the new law shows the country's commitment to phasing out single-use plastic products by 2040. So France is planning on getting rid of all of its plastic products by 2040. They're going to phase it out. They're going to gradually get rid of all this plastic. So a lot of countries are actually trying to do this. This is a common goal in most parts. I think in all countries, there's this thing called the sustainability goals, 可持续发展目标.
Wow.
And that is basically some goals that all the countries in the UN, I think, are supposed to be following right now and supposed to be trying to do by 2050. Somebody check that online. Don't trust me as the official source on that. But basically, a lot of country governments are trying to make these sustainable changes to improve our relationship with the environment and to save the planet from global warming.
Please.
So it's part of that, basically.
OK， 新法显示了该国到西元2040年要逐步淘汰一次性的塑胶产品的承诺。OK, wow. OK, hope that happens.
Fingers crossed.
And the time or the tense?
Right. The tense for this one is present. We're using the simple present tense because we are saying that this law is demonstrating something, it's showing something, it's happening now, right? So we're using the present tense. And we've got this word show. This new law shows the country's commitment. So can you tell us a little bit more about this word choice?
Sure. Okay, show 其实就是显示啊，呈现。那这句话当中，我们也可以用 display 或是 demonstrate， 同样有显示的意思。举例来说 Vanessa's commitment to practicing daily demonstrates her determination to become a professional musician. Vanessa 她每天练习的承诺，表明了她成为一名专业的音乐家的决心。
Exactly. So it's showing the country's commitment to phasing out single-use plastics. Now, commitment is the next word that we need to look at, and it basically means a promise or something that you will definitely do. When you make a commitment to something, you say, I'm going to do it. By hook or by crook, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get it done. Or you could be committing into a relationship. You could be getting married.
I'm thinking more of that.
Or you could be...
But
or you could be afraid
so
of commitment.
When people are saying, I'm afraid of a commitment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A commitment phobe. Exactly. So can you tell us a bit more about commitment, Laura?
Yes, I'd love to. Okay, commitment 就是承诺 commitment. Okay, 那我们的用法要注意哦，就是 commitment to, 然后我们接原形动词，或者是 commitment to V-I-N-G or somebody. 那本句也可以用名词 promise。那但是 promise 后面我们只能接什么呢？就是 to be 就是不定词或者是 somebody。我们来看一下例子。Abby made a promise to take care of her younger siblings after her mother passed away. 就是 Abby 承诺在她的母亲就是去世后照顾她的弟弟妹妹。
Exactly. So yeah, well, they're making a commitment to phasing out single-use plastics. Now, when we phase something out, we gradually get rid of it. We slowly stop using it. We make it not be publicly used in society anymore. A phase is basically a period of time. So, we talk about phases of the moon. We talk about phases in someone's life.
It's kind of like stages.
Stages, exactly.
Stages,
so when
right?
you think about stages of removing something, you don't get rid of it immediately.
Do it gradually, slowly.
Yes, you slowly get rid of it. You slowly get rid of it. And that's what they're doing to single-use plastics.
Okay, 所以 phase out 就是逐步淘汰，我们也可以用 gradually or slowly get rid of 来替换。We're going to phase out using paper records and switch to all digital ones once a year. 我们将1年后逐步淘汰使用纸本记录，转而使用数位，也就是 digital 的记录哦。那一次性的刚刚有提到就是 single use 单次使用。Unfortunately, this water bottle is single use, so it won't last well if you try to refill it. 不幸的，这水的瓶子是一次性的，所以如果你试图重新装满它，它没有办法持续很久。
Okay, so before we end our lesson today, let's go through our 4 sentences again. Some people might put off important tasks because they're afraid of making decisions and taking responsibility for the consequences. They'll leave everything until the last minute, which can often lead to feelings of stress. A law banning the use of plastic packaging for most fruits and vegetables came into effect in France in January 2022. The new law shows the country's commitment to phasing out single-use plastic products by 2040. All right, that's all the time that we have for today's episode. We're going to be seeing you in a few days for our picture writing assignment, so we're looking forward to seeing you then.
Oh my God, can't wait.
Bye.
Bye.